Today's part of our Business Spotlight program, I'm with Colin Keogh. He's the director of Sapien Innovation, and they're based in Dublin. So over to you, Colin. What is it you do, and for how long have you been doing it?
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so Sapien Innovation is an innovation consultancy. So we basically work with large multinationals, small SMEs, and kind of national-based governments all around innovation practice. So innovation practice is a real kind of floaty, like nothingness of a topic. So what we basically do with them was we help build internal innovation management processes for large organizations. So say, for example, Kingspan and how do they manage their innovation activities? Where do their innovative ideas come from? How do they inspire and unearth the kind of next generation of innovations that emerge in their companies? And then we do other aspects, as in we work with innovation based events. So things like hackathons, things like design sprints, any of those kind of more modern innovation based actions that lots and lots of companies want to do and want to run, but have no idea how to actually run in practice. We do
Okay,
that for them.
fantastic. Okay, fantastic. And yeah, you mentioned some of the bigger ones that you've been working with on your website there. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we've worked with some kind of large companies. We've done work with Dell and Kingspan and Revolut and Logitech and Karcher, these big kind of multinational organizations. But we do an awful lot of work then as well with kind of the European infrastructure. So things like the European Commission, the EIC accelerator programs, and other kind of national based programs in the US and in Southeast Asia. We're kind of a broad compassing. If any company or any organization wants to set up those innovation processes or events, we'll work with them from small little one and two man shops in business consultancy right up to large kind of multinational, many thousands of people and many kind of different engagements over a longer period of time.
Right. So SMEs listening to this, you'll be able to help them on their innovation side of stuff. Yeah.
Definitely, because it's a challenge. Like it's like my own introduction to innovation came by accident. I'd set up a non-profit when I was still in university. Like my background is my father is a car mechanic, and I started out with him tinkering away and starting on that kind of apprentice car mechanic kind of side. But like had a kind of quite a knack for engineering, let's say, developed directly from that. So in my university days when I was studying in engineering, I was exposed to, other ideas, the idea of startups and spin outs and things like that. So one of my first companies was a non-profit that did overseas development using 3D printers. This machine you can see over my shoulder actually is better traveled than I am, has toured half the world and manufactured hundreds of prosthetic hands and medical devices and things like that. But that was my introduction into innovation. I didn't really know anything about it. Me and another co-founder of mine stumbled our way through it, just trying to create new, interesting things. But over probably, say, the last 10, 11 years, innovation has become my specialty. I did a PhD in it, and most of my academic research is focused in that innovation space. So I'm acutely aware that everyone needs to do it. Everyone wants to do it, but it is very, very intimidating. It's a word that can mean everything and nothing at exactly the same time.
Interesting, fascinating stuff. Yeah, Colin, absolutely. And you've been growing over that period. I think you might have covered some of it, but what do you attribute your growth to?
I think our growth definitely, and we have been growing an awful lot, kind of over the last couple of years. Is two things: is mainly is flexibility.
Oh,
So when the COVID lockdowns happened and the fully remote work from home, we were already accustomed to that. We don't have a premises, we don't have offices. We have at any one stage we can have staff counts from two or three up to 10 or 11 people on a much more flexible kind of hybrid basis. So that flexibility was a massive advantage. It allows us then to, as I said, work with one to one with small SMEs, one and two people shops, right up to large kind of multinational organizations. We can pull in all of our kind of actors, all of our contributors, and have much more involvement. So that flexibility gave us great opportunity to really ebb and flow and contract with the market that's out there, but also the jobs as they kind of present. We have people that work for us in other countries, in the US and in Southeast Asia, and so it gives us these assets that turn on and off whenever we need them, giving us that inherent flexibility. So I know lots of businesses struggled with the work from home switch. it
Hmm.
was second nature to us. We had already been doing it. It didn't really interrupt our flow
Hmm.
at all, basically. So that flexibility was quite good. But then I
Hmm.
also think the second point that I think, yeah, really helped us is the kind of the normalcy in which we bring to quite a complex process. As I said, we've been involved in that innovation space for more than 10 years now at this stage, right from academic side, doing university-based research, right back down to my father's car mechanic garage. Then again, we can cover the wide gambit. If you want me to go and present on policy in the European Commission today, and then go and work with a group of school kids, 10 or 11 tomorrow, we can do that. So, you know what I mean? That
Wow.
sort of honesty when it comes to this innovation practice. We know it inside out, but we're aware other people don't, but they're subject matter experts. So basically our goal is to help them extract the knowledge that they might know already, but is hidden in process, hidden in the day-to-day activity, hidden in their inherent knowledge. So we're just there as a tool, basically. So I view myself as a very complicated hammer, let's say. A
Okay.
tool that's to be used by other people in a way to do a specific job, and that's what we're there to do.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. It's fascinating stuff. Um, if you had to start from square one again in business, what would you do differently?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think differently. I think I would try and embrace the digital aspect an awful lot more. So like
Okay.
I know an awful lot of a lot of business people that I work with becomes very reliant on one or two individuals. So in this case, I know Sapien is basically live or die on my own back. We have many people that work with us, but it kind of lives or dies on the capacity for me to be available to run these events or to work with these partners, meaning that in busy periods you can be really really stretched. So I'd really like to embrace the kind of digital aspects. The digital horizon has changed completely. Could we use some of those more asynchronous events to kind of remove me and remove some of our actors from the process, and
Hmm.
empower us to do maybe more with less time commitment? So I really do think that engaging with that the wide scope of the digital tools that are there. Now we're good with it presently. We use an awful lot of them. We use collaborative spaces, we use the online asynchronous platforms, but there is so much more available that I'd really make everything, if I was to start again, make it digital first from the beginning, to
Okay.
then maximize and leverage the amount we could do, being
Mm.
less reliant on human bodies in the room or human bodies in the space.
Yeah, the speed, I suppose, with AI is, everybody's talking about. I don't know how much of it I understand, but I certainly have clients who are using it to speed up all sorts of different
Oh,
processes.
definitely, definitely. I use it nearly every day, and it just like, on some days it's a hindrance, and then the next day I can do 2 weeks worth of work in 2 hours. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Using these AI systems. So I kind of build an awful lot more of that into what we do and make it more kind of separate from individuals if I was to start again.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Um, and going on to as an employer, what have been your biggest learnings as an employer since you began in business?
The biggest I think the biggest learning by far is not actually knowing what you want when you want to go and hire. So, we're in that kind of innovation based space. Sometimes we've gone to hire looking for a specific thing. I'm an engineer by training, so I have a preference for hiring engineers. But I think I'm the only engineer that we have in the company. Therefore, in that case, I had assumed, wrongly so, that was the sort I was looking for. So, I followed the traditional trope of innovation, new products, new designs. Oh, we want engineers. We don't. I think what we really want is the capacity of the individual to be innovative. So some of the people we have working for us, their backgrounds are in history, backgrounds in art and design and culture, in disability studies. Very few of them come from that technical background. They just have the capacity to be more innovative and more future looking and more open to these sorts of new fields and new areas. So yeah, I think that would one of be the biggest lesson is, you think you want to hire for something in particular, but then experience proves that no, you actually want to hire for something completely different, and it makes it much much harder in the long run to hire and to get the people that you're looking for in reality.
Right. Okay. If I understand it, and at the risk of cliches, is this the original thinking outside the box type of thing, or?
Exactly. That's exactly it. You know what I mean? It's anyone has that capacity to truly think outside the box. And it's something I'd said many, many years ago offhand, but somebody just reminded me of recently. Somebody asked me and said, "Oh, you're very good at thinking outside the box." And I'd said to them, "Well, what box are you talking about? What is this box? What are you referring to?" And they reminded me of that. You know, you're not looking for somebody that thinks outside the box. You're looking for somebody that doesn't recognize there's a box there at all. You know, they do this fluid innovation, doesn't matter what field, doesn't matter what region or country or area, they just have that capacity to live in the future and then help other people create these ideas from the future.
Wow, it's fascinating stuff, Colin. Fascinating stuff. Okay. And I suppose the other one then, of course, with all the work we're doing, is the one that a lot of my interviewees kind of wonder about is how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business?
You should probably ask my wife and son that more than me, to be fair. But like I managed to balance it quite well. And it's somebody that like I'm involved in multiple businesses and companies. I always have many, many projects on at once. I'm always doing some teaching or some lecturing or consulting or some advisory work or business work. But what I found was all of it follows the one kind of singular direction. All of it is in that innovation space where it's building new businesses, business planning, business development, product innovation. All of it helps support each other. So regardless of what I do any day, it helps support the other kind of feathers in the bowl. So
Okay.
that kind of really helps. You know, it stops kind of whiplash of me moving between different fields. It stops the delay in having to spin up or spin down. So I think keeping everything in that one singular direction helps me manage and helps me kind of, deal with quite a complex and quite a busy schedule in a good way. Now, the second point is I really enjoy it. So, like, I would nearly do it for as a hobby if need be. I do in some instances do it as a hobby. I'd volunteer an awful lot with kind of startup programs and business creation programs. So I'm exposing myself to even more work, but on a voluntary basis. I love that generating something new. Whether it's a new business or a new market or a new idea, I just need to kind of scratch that itch and ask that question, is there something new there? So, I do thoroughly enjoy it. And, I bring other people along with me. So that definitely, definitely helps. Like, I love living in that new space. I love finding the new thing. I love answering the complicated question. I love seeing people with that spark kind of ignite in their eye of like, oh, that's that next step we need. I love that then so much that yeah, I do it in my spare time as well, much to the detriment of my family at home.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, definitely the passion comes across in
good,
the yeah,
good.
absolutely.
At least it does that then.
Yeah, yeah, no, it definitely coming across to me anyway. Um, just looping back to employees, I think you covered this already, but what qualities do you look for in employees and how do you foster a positive and productive work environment?
Yeah, yeah, and I think then as yeah, we kind of mentioned a little bit the flexible nature, the flexibility. It's such a cornerstone in what we do. That flexibility is great because we're doing innovation stuff and innovation practice and innovation, activities with companies. We don't know what we're going to do when we go in to do it. We don't. If somebody comes to us and says, "Oh, we need you to develop this specific new sort of product," I'm back being an engineer. But if we're going working with a large company and they say we're looking for the next generation, we're looking for our next product line, we don't know what that's going to be. So that requires flexibility from our side and the people that work with us. You have to go into something that is unknown, that will be turbulent, that people might fight the process because, you're going to be countering an awful lot of the learned lessons and everyday practice of companies. You might be testing or questioning their assumptions. You might be testing or questioning their underlying basic business function. So you might get a little bit of backlash. So that flexibility is definitely required. You kind of have to go in knowing your innovation space, knowing a little bit about the industry and area you're working in, but be willing to go through a kind of roller coaster of ups and downs and pushback and agreement. So that flexibility is definitely, definitely required because there isn't a clear direction until many, many hours, days, weeks, or even months into one of these innovation processes. you don't know what the end outcome's going to be until you get there. So that end approach emerges in that process. If we knew what it was before we begin, it's not going to be innovative. It's only innovative if we're creating something that we didn't assume or know was there before we began.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic stuff. And I suppose just to round off, what are some common misconceptions about running a business and how do you address them?
I think that one of the common misconceptions I find is about future planning. It's maybe it's in other areas, maybe it's in other industries, but we can't future plan. It's very, very difficult to plan forward to make goals for the next year. So you need to that reactive, flexible. Some years, like you take COVID, for example, when COVID struck, the whole world shut down and we'd never been busier. Every company, every organization, from the European Commission to national governments, needed to deploy innovation. So we worked on big COVID response project. We worked with the European Innovation Council. We work with large companies, Ford, General Motors, all of these sorts of organizations to adapt and tackle COVID. We would never, ever have seen that coming. And common sense would dictate when the world locks down, all of this action would cease or stop or slow, when in reality it ramped up even further. So that predictability, it was an unknown. We couldn't predict forward, and for any sort of like new kind of cutting edge space, we don't know what's going to come next. As you mentioned earlier on, AI. Nobody really knew AI would have impacted as much as it did or be as functional as it was. And then how is that going to be impacting the innovation practice and day to day business practice? And for things like that, I don't think people have really paid enough attention or are aware at how much it is actually going to change day to day practice. It's you have again now people in their home office at home can do 2 months worth of work in 2 hours with the right direction and right focus. How's the rest of the business world and space going to adapt to that? You know what I mean? It's like the internet, but you now have a guide to the internet that is a subject matter expert on any specific area you want and can talk to you in the language that you want it to talk to. So you have every expert you could imagine at the ends of your fingers. How are you going to deploy it and how are you going to use it in practice? So
Yeah,
yes, stuff like that is kind of yeah, I think there's lots of space there and it should be adapted by more companies, really.
fantastic. Yeah, and it's riveting stuff. I could keep going all day on this one. I mean, it's unbelievable that we have this resource. So listen, Colin, thanks very much for taking the time. I really
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
And as I say, we look forward to getting this launched out in our various channels.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you very much.